Good morning. Say good morning.
Oh, good morning. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you've done this before.
I
Hey,
have. I
yeah,
don't know. I
this.
don't know. I thought you were going to do the introduction.
No, I do good morning. You say good morning. I'm Gordon Walsh,
I'm Joe Abraham,
and you're listening to
looking for the evidence.
Outstanding. So,
All right.
see, me and Rod's been doing this for such a long time that it's
Yeah,
you know,
it flows better.
yes,
This
it's
is the second
natural. So
time.
it's your second time. So, anyways, as we can see, Ron's not here today. So. Joe's filling in for him. We thought he did a wonderful job the last time. We thought he was stellar, so we asked if he can come back.
So hopefully I'll keep the streak.
Yeah. So, hey, anyways, the show's sponsored by Alive in Christ. We're located on Badger Road, which is Badger Canyon. Um, Sunday service is at 10 o'clock. We'd love to see you here. Also, go to the Wisdom Bookstore. It's our Christian bookstore here. The other two closed down, and keep this one going. Go buy some stuff from them. That way they can stay open and we can get stuff there.
Yeah,
So,
it's always good to have people walk into a store and get to talk to people and talk to the owners.
well, not only that, it creates jobs, it creates income for our community, but it is a Christian bookstore,
Yeah.
and not always when you order something on Amazon, it's what you expect when it arrives at the door. You know what I mean? And besides that, Amazon has all kinds of stuff that is non-Christian, like pornography or sex toys or
Oh,
yeah. So I guess probably not pornography, but some probably what are the other things people have told me that they sell.
they do have that stuff? I didn't know that.
Well, I've been told they sell that stuff. So what else do they sell? Witchcraft stuff, demonic stuff.
They basically sell everything.
Yeah, they basically sell everything. So you're supporting a non-Christian organization when you have the opportunity to support a Christian organization. Of course, there are Christian organizations online that you can go support as well. So, but hey, go check out Wisdom Bookstore. Keep them in business. You don't have to spend all your money there, but spend a little bit of your money. So
Yeah.
that's my recommendation. And show up here on Sunday. Why not?
We're a fun crowd.
Yes. So, hey, today's topic is where did sickness come from, or did God create sickness, and all this? There's a multitude of variations of how we can ask the question, but sickness, does it come from God? Did God create it? Because if God creates everything, then He created sickness.
Yeah.
So He created evil.
Well, technically, yes. I mean, Satan's evil. God created Satan, but he turned evil.
So, okay. So the reason I ask that question is because we have to, right up front, understand God created everything, but out of that, not everything was created by Him. So He allows
Yeah,
things to happen.
yeah, not
right?
for the purpose that it's intended. I mean, it's
Right.
misbehaving or whatever, but it's
Yes.
not the intended purpose.
But the one thing that He did with humanity and the angelic world is he allowed them to have free choice.
Yes.
Right? We call it free will, but they got to choose to be with Him or not, and Satan fell. So, okay? So, did God create sickness? Did He create disease? Did He create, I mean, this is kind of close to you, right?
Well, yeah, but you see, the question is for me is not if God created the disease. It's the question is because the disease is more than just the pathogen. It's the symptoms, it's the other stuff that comes with it, the sorrows and the pain. All of that encompasses within a disease the emotional part of it.
Right.
But the pathogen by itself, like the virus or the bacteria or the fungi or whatever else there is, I'm sure there's some other stuff, mold, whatever else. Usually bacteria and viruses are probably going to be the biggest. Cancer, that's a big one out there.
Right.
So cancer is a great example, honestly. Cells were built for human life, and when they start deteriorating and misbehave or they start mutating differently, it becomes cancerous.
Okay, but what does that mean then? Do you mean mutate differently? I mean,
So cells replicate to keep producing new cells. So when they don't function exactly as to how they should, they become cancerous.
okay, so what you're saying is just so everybody understands this a little bit better, okay, is your body, let's say skin, okay, is always reproducing new skin.
Yeah.
Right? And they're forms of individual little cells.
Yes.
And what you're saying is one of those little cells come into play and it's deformed. It's bad. And that's what cancer is.
Basically, and then it replicates, and then what it does is it starts to hijack the original process, right? And then it sort of grows and grows and eats away, or basically takes over the functions of the original cell. And
Okay.
it becomes more powerful, and so it kind of spreads to basically your body and shuts you down, because your body now tries to fight. And there's a lot of other things that go on. I mean, there's, yeah, so it's not,
Well, okay, there's a belief out there that sickness comes from sin, right? Okay, so if sickness comes from sin, then if someone gets cancer, they must have been sinning, right?
I don't agree with that.
Well, if you don't agree, because right here in Psalms, right, Psalms 38, verse 3, it says, there is no soundness in the flesh, right, because of your indignations. There is no health in my bones because of my sin, right? So it talks about sin right there, having no health in you, if you will. So
What was that, Psalms 38?
Psalms 38, yes. Psalms, and then we've got Psalms, what is it, 107, 17, it says, some were fools through their sinful ways, and because of their inequities, suffered affliction.
I think that doesn't mean God is afflicting you. I think a lot of times your stupidity can cause you to have deterioration of self. So I think drinking would be an example of that.
Okay, so what you're saying is somebody that does something that's out of God's wishes, okay?
Yeah.
Drinking alcohol, all right?
Out of alignment, yeah.
In excess, we'll say, okay? Or doing drugs or something like that. So you're saying that because of someone's sinful lifestyle, that lifestyle can lead to sickness.
Yes, and also another thing is, this is proven, because if you still sin usually has guilt or weight on you, and that's kind of usually stress, and stress is shown to create a lot of new diseases, issues that you don't, hypertension, problems that you don't have. And it is known that when you have a healthy life and a healthy mind, which a godly man is promised, and to what I understand and I see, godly people who are more focused on the will of God and kind of lead a righteous life seem to have a healthier self, mentally speaking.
Okay?
Yeah, so I think it does correspond to good health.
Okay, but you do see good people that are healthy get sick.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that happens too.
Okay, so what you're saying, okay, what I want the audience to kind of understand, because we're on the topic of living a sinful life, right? So can sinful lives lead to sickness, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then you ask how does that lead to sickness? And we're talking about cancer as the example. Doesn't have to be cancer, but we're using that as the example, right?
So cancer can be, well, the origins of all cancers are not understood, although certain cancers are understood, like mouth cancer, oral cancer, usually through smoking, through dipping. There's certain cancers that you can control.
Okay, so we'll use dipping, because I dipped my whole military, just about my whole military career. But I started actually chewing tobacco earlier when I was a young man, when we'd herd cattle and stuff, right? And it was just a thing for cowboys, I guess. I wouldn't say I was a cowboy, but we were with cowboys all the time. We lived on a ranch. So, anyways, so what you're doing is if you, and I don't know how many produce, okay, but let's say every day I produce 1 million million cells in my lip, right? And so 1 million die and I get 1 million more. Okay, well that there's a chance that one of those would be a bad cell, correct?
Well, yeah, that's true,
Okay.
I guess. But
Now, so if I'm dipping now, instead of, and this part I don't know the exact numbers again, but it is true. I remember reading a long time ago. But now instead of producing 1 million a day and 1 million dying, I'm producing like 4 times as much. So now I'm reproducing 4 million cells a day as opposed to 1 million cells a day. So in other words, they're dying a lot faster, okay? So because of that, it just increased the chance of having abnormalities, all right? So, and that's the way it was explained to me, and so forth. So, and then if we read in Micah 6:13, therefore I have begun to destroy you, to ruin you because of your sin, right? And, you know, really when we're looking at that, yes, a sinful life can produce diseases, right? It can produce cancer. It can produce other, you know, blood infections, you know, other, you know, kidney diseases. It can produce these things because of your lifestyle. So yes, sin can.
Yeah, is it direct condemnation, or is it, I think that's where I mean, because one, in the New Testament, it does talk about God's extending a period of grace,
Right.
right? Which I think is different from before the Messiah came.
Right.
The Old Testament, I think there is a difference between the period we are living in right now versus the Old Testament period.
So today we have no sickness?
No, we have sickness, but I think direct condemnation from God is put away because grace has been extended till the coming of the Messiah, coming back of the Messiah.
Okay, to me you're not making sense. So, okay, Old Testament, you had illnesses because of lifestyles.
No, no, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, in the Old Testament, what happened was God would say, okay, these people are condemned, I want them destroyed. Or this person is condemned, I condemn you.
So what you're saying is only when God was involved, people were condemned. Otherwise, everybody was perfectly healthy in the Old Testament.
No, that's one way. See, sickness is not just through condemnation.
I know, that's one of the things I picked
that's what
up.
I'm saying.
I mean, we can
Yeah.
go on
So
and more.
one of the ways I think sickness has through, you know, if you look at the biblical text, it says condemnation, like I condemn you, and so you are sick, or, you know, you get sick.
So God gets you sick.
Basically, God punishes you.
Okay, so explain that more, because so now, when Pastor Joseph passed away, he got sick, so he got punished by God.
No, see, that's, again, if you're saying that's the only one way to get sick. No, that's one of the ways.
Okay.
There's a lot of other ways.
But where does it tell me in the scriptures that God punishes me?
Like if you look at Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, right? He was a king, right? And when he got prideful, God condemns him or punishes him, and he becomes a madman.
Okay.
Mental instability. I mean, he didn't progress into mental instability. He just all of a sudden became mentally unstable.
So you're saying God does that today?
I'm saying God does not do that today
Okay, where does it say that in Scripture?
because of Jesus Christ and the period of grace.
So, in the year of our Lord, AD, all this time since Jesus died on the cross, rose again, we're in the New Testament age, that no longer God intervenes and makes people crazy. Because doesn't it tell us in the scriptures that God's the same today and forever? So, I mean,
God is the same. I think God is the same. But what Jesus has done is, so basically grace was there, but it wasn't revealed until Christ Jesus. So it doesn't mean it changed. But from the people of the Old Testament versus what people of the New Testament, they have more information.
okay, so, all right, so if someone gets sick in the New Testament age, then it has to be from their sinful nature then?
Not necessarily.
Well, then how is it?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but right now, see, I know you're saying a lot. To me, you're saying a lot, but I don't hear any biblical proof here.
Okay,
so
biblical
that's
proof.
what I'm asking for
Well, I don't
is
think the Bible really talks about condemnation through sickness or sickness being only through only
because
through
what
sin.
you're saying is anything that I find in the Old Testament is wiped clean now that Jesus came, because it talks about in Job that Satan intervenes, right? Satan comes down and gets him afflicted, right? So, and that's in Job, well, throughout the whole story of Job. You can read Job right there. And Satan comes down and says, hey, what about your servant Job, right? So can I mess with him, right? So you're saying that won't happen anymore.
No, I'm not saying that won't happen anymore. I'm saying condemnation. So God's saying you're condemned because you have sinned against me. You have no mercy, or you're done. Basically, like Sodom and Gomorrah.
So okay, well, yeah, that's complete annihilation. So we're not talking about a complete annihilation of people being killed. We're not talking about the flood. We're talking about sickness and illness, right? And disease.
So that's what I said when I said, so basically it's saying you get a disease, you're going to die is condemnation to me. But if you're
Well,
saying
yeah, but the
about-
disease can kill you. I mean, if I mean, so you're saying that God gives no diseases that you will die from. Then He'll only give diseases that can be healed or cured.
No, I don't think God's sitting there doing this, honestly.
But it is in the scriptures. So I mean, if He's the same today as yesterday and as forever, right? But you're saying, and I understand that you can say He's the same, but He doesn't have to do this, right? But I'm wanting to know, where does it say that grace prevents God from putting affliction upon people when He's clearly done it in the Old Testament? Then,
Well, because grace states that the whole point of grace is that He is now allowing you to come back to Him without Him having to do it on like what He did to Israel, where He would send an affliction to bring them back.
so
The gospel kind of
so
plays
what
that role.
you're saying is that this, like, there's a lot of Christians that believe that, to include Ron, actually, he believes that this COVID is a wake-up call from God. So God, in essence, now I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but I do recall a few weeks ago when we talked about it, he acknowledged that this very could be from God, right? And to wake the Christian up, right? And or to bring people home. So here, I'm just wanting to get clarity with you, because I know we're on this here. But if you're a Christian, God doesn't inflict you. But if you're a non-Christian in today's time, God could afflict you to bring you home.
I got to think about that one, because I do know that I don't know if God intervenes. Intervention from God is I consider that as miracles. Anything, good or bad,
Right.
usually. But He does work through things that happen. So if I got sick, He might send someone to kind of probe me. If so, let's say I got cancer, right? And I'm a non-Christian, and I'm suffering emotionally, I'm depressed, just no value for life. I'm just, my kid, if I have family, then that's going to be a lot more. I'm like, what am I going to do with my kids? So then God can use that. I don't think God is like giving me cancer so He can bring me home. But if I do get cancer, God can use that to bring me home.
Okay, so
I don't think God is scheming in a way where, okay, I'll send this guy cancer, and this guy, I'll just have a guy.
well,
walk
I
up
don't.
to him,
Yeah, but see, I don't look at it as God scheming. If God gives somebody an illness, right, because He's wanting to wake them up, I mean, they still have the opportunity to say yea or nay to the wake up. But I mean, that doesn't mean God's scheming anything. But He's
Well,
like,
He's planning it out. I don't think God really plans.
why would He not plan it
Because
out?
He's
Why-
already set the plan in place. I understand. I think individual intervention or individual hand of God, if God has to work in your life individually, I think it has to be upon your request. When you pray and ask God, say, God, could you heal me, or could you do this for me? So then He has to do something out of the natural realm, where He has to break the order of the natural realm to do that. A miracle is basically an intervention of what naturally would have transpired.
Okay.
So I think
I think
it's really
I think what you're saying, to me, this is what you're saying is really good theory, right? And it's a good argument, but I don't see any basis from your argument except for
get
your
that.
own
No.
feelings. You think this is a good thing. I don't want to believe this, so since I don't want to believe this, then I don't know. I mean, I would suggest everybody read John chapter 9, because it talks about this stuff, right? And it's a good area to say, hey, what does God do? What can He do? Because in John chapter 11, and then also in John chapter 11, I gotta say, is and maybe John chapter 11 might be a better one, but this illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Right?
Yeah.
So, so the I still see God being able to intervene in this world, whether you're a Christian or you're not, to bring glory to Him. And He, if He needs to bring affliction, because I don't look at God as saying this is the end stop. I don't think God looks at life the exact same way we look at life.
No, yeah, yeah.
So He's like, hey, if you die of this disease, like let's say Pastor Joseph. Okay, I don't believe Pastor Joseph got a disease because of his lifestyle. I don't believe Pastor Joseph got sick because he was a sinful nature,
I don't
right?
either.
But maybe God gave him that disease. Okay, and the reason He gave him that disease is because he wanted somebody to represent, and he knew Joe had the capabilities. Now, whether Joe did it or not, that was still up to Joe. But he knew Joe had the capabilities and the intestinal fortitude to say, you know what, despite I'm walking through this, in the struggles that I have, I'm going to represent God to the best of my ability. And he did that very well, probably better than anybody. Well, I know better than anybody I know. And so he represented God's holiness and grace through his struggles, and by that he was able to affect so many more people. Okay, now I'm not saying God gave this, but let's just say He did, right? And so therefore, because of that, and he has this disease and then he passes away, because to God it's like, hey, he came home. I already knew when that was going to happen, right? So, but he was able to impact so many more people because of that.
Yeah, but I don't see the relevance of why God should have given it, though. Even if it was just a genetic mutation, He could have still done these things and still glorified God, and God would have still accepted it as glory.
Yeah, but God uses us.
honorable.
God uses us, right? He doesn't have to use us, but He chose to use us. So He set up kind of that rule.
Yeah,
Right.
I understand He uses this, but I don't think I mean, I know He is capable of doing this, but I don't see.
I guess my point is, Joe, and I want to move on a little bit past this, okay? The point that I'm seeing with you is you're stating that because we're in grace, God doesn't intervene with illnesses anymore, right? And you were when I said, well, what if you're a non-Christian and He does that, so you come to God, and but it doesn't apply to Christians. You weren't too sure of that, okay? So my thing is if we're going to make a statement, then have some scriptures to back it up. You know what I mean? And right now I feel like that the conversation for you, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but this is what a lot of people do, is they have a feeling and they want the feeling to
There's a logical system.
trump. Well, I know, but there's nothing in scriptures that say that.
So the reason why I have the theory is because logically speaking, if you say, okay, God brings these things into place, right? The best loose answer is, oh, everything is done so God knows what He does. But logically speaking, then now you're looking at a God who can do whatever He wants and still say everything's good without us understanding it.
Okay,
You know?
so, but I don't see any scriptures backing you up why the transition from the New Testament to the Old Testament, right? I understand what you're saying, but that's the part that I'm struggling with. But here, I want to bring up something real quick, okay? Because one of the things that people say, why did God create disease, right? Not allow disease, create disease, okay? That's kind of like saying He created Satan, but He didn't create Satan. He allowed Satan to do it. He didn't create Adam and Eve to sin, but they allowed them to sin by eating of that, okay? Now, the one thing that we know is when you don't pull the weeds, right, that they take over, right? And we don't want the weeds, the goat heads, all these weeds out there, right? Unless you're out there always maintaining it, right? But see, weeds weren't in the garden. Weeds came about later. Thistles and thorns and weeds came out later. And where do we find this? Because this is one of the questions, so I wanted to point this out to you because of the question. This is in Genesis chapter 3, and I'm not going to read all of chapter 3, but because of you have listened to the voice of your wife and eaten, this is in verse 17, and eaten from the tree of which I commanded you, you shall not eat. Cursed is the ground that you become because of you. In pain you shall eat in all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat plants of the field. So it talks about it right there that those things came up, because otherwise, the garden. But see, what I'm trying to say is because of the the corruption or the sin that Adam and Eve brought in. And you can look throughout history that there's more diseases today than there has been throughout history, right? You know, and why is that? Because we're not evolving. A lot of people say we evolved into something greater, right? We're an evolution type thing, right? We're actually devolving. Like one of the things that they say is, oh, we're more intelligent today than we were way back when. That part's not true. What is true, we have more technology, yes.
What is true is basically we are building on each other. So as a child, today, by age 7 or 8, I have learned more information than what an entirety of mankind would have learned when some of the smartest people would have learned
Right.
600 years ago.
Well, I don't know about that one, but yes, I understand your point, right? So, very true but I feel, see, when we look at like, oh, we drive cars, we fly planes, oh, we're evolving, but we're looking at what we've created, not what we've become, right? You know, we have more diseases today. We have, you know, all these, our bodies itself, you know, and we can say, oh, we're living longer, but that's not necessarily true either. Now, we'll take away the Old Testament because, you know, different time, and I'm talking about the Old Testament before the flood, because we're not living to be 900 years or 600 years. But when you go out through history, anybody that lived a life of non-labor, not out in the fields and plowing, and you know they were rules, they were royalty, or they were in some type of, you know, highest. They lived as long as we live. You know, what I mean, that hasn't really changed. You know what I mean? And so the reason we live longer is because we're not out there killing our bodies every day just to survive. You know, so
Well,
but.
plus medication's gotten better.
Yeah, and medication has gotten better and has prolonged our life. So those things have happened, but we have more diseases. We're not evolving, we're devolving, because Adam and Eve, they might have came in with, you know, the sin, and through that they got a cold, right? And then Cain and Abel, they might get a cold and a flu. And then these are all hypotheticals, you know what I mean?
So when it comes to pathogens
Right.
specifically, pathogens are not just disease carriers. They actually have other purposes and roles within our environment.
Okay.
Like bacteria and viruses. They
Right.
they help with moving DNA around. They help with making sure that there's healthy transmission of DNA from one animal, one plant to another.
Right.
You know, and most of the viruses don't really take over the host's functions. You know, they don't basically sabotage you.
Yep.
So there are a few viruses, like we know now, that can kill you.
Yeah,
You know,
and the one thing before we close up here, we've come up to our time, so it's actually been pretty good, and is you can get diseases through your lifestyle, through sin, right? Sinful lifestyle will get that. You can paranormal activity, in other words, Satan can be involved somehow because we see that through Job. I don't think Satan's lost his ability, you know, to do those things. You know, personal irresponsibilities. You know, again, a lifestyle type thing, you know, and then our own activities and things like that is just, you know, life happens. You know, we're not perfect anymore. You could get a disease, no fault of your own. It just, we're not made perfect anymore. So those things can happen as well. So, you know, anyways, you know, did God create disease? I don't think God created it. I think he allowed it. Same way he didn't create evil, he allowed evil,
yeah,
right?
no, I agree with that.
So-
What I said God created was the vectors or things that brought about the disease.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody else can create it.
Yep.
Yeah, God created them, but if they function out of line, that's just part of nature because he allowed nature to take its course. It's not perfect anymore. So
Yep, exactly.
It can waver.
Yep.
And
So
that's the whole purpose of the new earth and the new heaven. So
outstanding. New purpose and new earth, and the tempter will be buried forever. So hey, God bless, Godspeed. I'm Gordon Walsh.
I'm Joe Abraham.
Hey, hopefully see you on a Sunday, 10 o'clock, Alive in Christ, Badger Road, Badger Canyon. God bless.